Second. So we find ourselves once again in a strange land, a beautiful land, um, perfect setting, if you will, to continue our discussion on death, dying, and the art of living. And I hope that we can become as relaxed and as informal as the environment that we find ourselves in. Um, I thought today we will continue examining the reality of death and dying and continue in search of some kind of way to adjust to that reality. You know, sitting here in this Japanese garden, I can't help but be reminded of the incredible wisdom that the Japanese culture has kept for our posterity. And one of the great mystics and yogi who is cherished by the Japanese, of course, as he is cherished by so many who have had the great good fortune of reading his sutras, is of course the great Tibetan yogi Milarepa. And it is Milarepa, I think, that will help us set the tone for today's discussion. And the great and very venerable Jetsun Milarepa once said that out of horror of death, he fled to the mountains and again meditated on the uncertainty of the hour of his death and capturing the fortress like nature of the unending and deathless nature of the mind, he was able to conquer all his fears. And so we find a thousand years later that we are all still fleeing in horror from our death. But unlike Malirepa, we're not fleeing to the mountains. We're not fleeing to a retreat, some quiet place where we make the commitment to sit and contemplate and meditate until we're able to resolve that issue. Of course, we flee other places, though. We flee to the bars. We flee to parks. We flee to all manners of other places where there is no atmosphere and no intention of really understanding and coming to grips with this task of dying. You see, that is one of the greatest tasks that we all will face in life. Uh, the task of death and the task of dying. And if we have not prepared ourselves to deal with this, then of course we will undergo much suffering. It's really ironic that it is almost the assumed uh, um, understanding of all religions, whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism or Islam or Judaism, all of these religions presume that its adherents understand that there is life after death. But what is very interesting, we have found, is that so few of them really prepare us in a very detailed way, beyond dogma and doctrines, for this inevitable day that we have, where this life will come to an end. And so, as a result of that, the vast majority of us meet our death totally, totally unprepared. And then there's much suffering. And then there's much gnashing of teeth. So at some point, you see, we have to take matters into our own hands because you may not be able to depend upon your priest or your imam or your mullah, you see, or your rebbe to prepare you for death. Very often, these rabbis, these imams, these mullahs are themselves not ready for death. So how will they assist you? So this is a task that each of us must do for ourselves. Remember, no one was born for you, no one will die for you. It's not like you can substitute somebody else when the time of your death comes. You can't call on your wife or your priest or your brother or sister to say, now come die for me. This is not going to be possible. Either you have prepared yourself for it or you have not. And that is one of the insights that you have to have as it relates to the value of this precious human existence. And I call this human existence precious only in the sense that you have been exposed to some teaching. To have the human body and to have human existence and to not encounter any teachings almost renders that human existence null and void. In the sense that you will miss the opportunity to prepare yourself for those states of being that will come after your death. And that becomes the great value of this precious human birth, is that it is the only Bardo in which we can actually prepare ourselves for the succeeding Bardos that are to come. Hence, the saints have put so much emphasis on not wasting this life. And the reality you see is that in our culture, in modern culture as a whole, we tend to waste a lot of time. Now that might strike you as being odd because most of us feel that, well, Bhagwan, I don't even have enough time. I have so many things to do that I want to do, and my biggest problem is finding time to do those very things. And I'm saying now that no, actually, you wasting your time. That is why you are experiencing the kind of pressure and tension to get things done, is because you waste time. And what do we waste our time on? We waste our time on those activities that distract us from the reality of our death and dying. You see? We will occupy ourselves with the most trivial pursuits in the flight from the reality of our own empty lives and our impending death. And so in this way we waste time, you see. We waste time. We can't find time to meditate. Why is it that you can't find time to meditate? Because you wasted all your time on meaningless little things. You cannot find time to study the teachings that these great saints and sages have left for us. Why are you having so much time problem? Why are you having so much difficulty finding time for these things? It's because you are simply wasting your time. You've wasted so much time, you have no time for this. And yet, it is only by having a clear understanding of death can you even begin to have a clear understanding of life. It is very interesting is that the reflections on death and dying helps prioritize your life. It detrivializes it, does it not? Without a deep, fearless reflection on death and the facticity of your dying, your life will feel meaningless and trivial. And so if you've been having the experience of this meaninglessness of your life, please make a note. It is there because you have not seriously contemplated your death and your dying. Hence the feeling of voidness, hence the feeling of meaninglessness. And you don't know what to do. You don't even have any priorities. You're just simply moving through life. So the reflection then on our death, one of the treasures, one of the the treasures that comes out of that reflection is that it begins to prioritize your life. It is very interesting if I asked each of you to list out for me those things that you would definitely want to accomplish if you only had 2 years left to live. Your list will consist of certain things. A lot of things that you are now doing, you will not put on your list. You will not put in there, see all of Martin's shows, catch all of the, those things won't go on your list, will they? You see, you will start factoring out the trivia, the nonsense, the bullshit, the chicken shit. Is that right? And that list will begin to reflect what you feel are the essential things that you need to focus your energies on in those ensuing 2 years. And then if I ask you now to adjust that list based on the fact that you will have 2 months to live. And again, that list itself will now be edited some more. Right? It will be edited some more. Some of the trips will come off of there. Your long cherished trip to Hawaii will be crossed out. You see, your this and your that. Many things will be crossed out, and that list will start shrinking even more. Now you will becoming even more focused on the essentials of life. And then if we say reduce the list based on 2 days of life left, now you will come very close to what is really significant. The problem, of course, is that we are uncertain about the hour of our death. And it is because of our uncertainty of the hour of our death, we take that uncertainty and we turn it into a kind of false sense of security and continue our trivial living going. Because we don't know when we're going to die. Yes, okay, Bhagwan, I'm going to die. Yes, okay, I can accept. Sure. I'm not stupid. At least give me this much credit. I'm intelligent enough to understand that I will die. But the problem is, I don't know when. It's uncertain. I don't know the moment. I don't know the hour. I don't know under what condition. And therefore, since I cannot know the time, the precise time, hour, and conditions, then let me just continue. And it is this kind of misuse of the uncertainty of death that now fuels us along a continuum of trivial and useless living. Mararepa says that out of the horror of his death, he fled to the mountain where he meditated again and again on the uncertainty of the hour and the moment. And then entering into the fortress-like awareness of the deathless and unending nature of mind, he conquered all fears of his death. Like Mararepa, we have to enter into this uncertainty. And because it is uncertain the moment, the time when you will die and meet your death, therefore all the more urgency to be prepared every moment for it. We do just the opposite. We don't prepare at all because we don't know when it's going to happen. Mararepa said, no, you should be prepared every moment, every instant. If death should come while we're sitting out here to one of us, we should be ready in this moment. That is the appropriate response to the facticity of the uncertainty of our death, is to be prepared every moment for it. So there are many things we have to understand, you see, in order to adequately and appropriately prepare ourselves for this task of dying. And remember, simply collecting these teachings and not integrating these teachings into your day-to-day life is meaningless. It really is meaningless. And yet I know that so many of us are simply collectors of teachings, and you've been collecting all kinds of teachings. You've collected the teachings of Islam, you've collected the teachings of Judaism, you've collected the teachings of Jesus, you've collected the teachings of Buddha, you've collected the teachings of the great thinkers in our own culture, but you've just been collecting teachings. You've done nothing with the teachings. You've not integrated the teachings into your life. Hence, the teachings will be of no value to you. The teachings are precious. They are treasures only if you are able to transform them into your life. that they integrate your moment-to-moment living. Otherwise, it is pointless. And over all this time, we've had so many meetings, so many of the great teachings have been shared amongst us. And yet I realize that perhaps one or two of you will actually benefit from the teaching. I understand that. The majority of you sitting here will derive absolutely no benefit from these teachings. Yes, you will collect them. Yes. You will memorize them. Yes. You will be able to expound beautifully and eloquently on them. Yes. But you will die a horrible death because you have not really integrated. The great mystics say that the person who has practiced the teachings and have integrated the teachings into their moment-to-moment living, when death comes, they meet death in a state of joy and happiness, full of joy, of great happiness, like a child entering into the lap of his mother. It's the way they have explained the attitude that the serious spiritual practitioner brings towards the moment of his or her own death. That's the most serious practitioner only who can do this. The next level is that practitioner who maybe has not perfected the sadhana, heard the teachings, began to integrate the teaching, but had not totally perfected it. But at least they have done enough work on themselves that when they enter and meet their death, they are fearless. Death is, they're no longer afraid, you see. They have familiarized themselves, prepared themselves enough to deal with it. Now remember, I'm not talking about this kind of pseudo-philosophical fearlessness that you and I have. Our fearlessness of death is based on our intellect. You see, it's not genuine. It's not real. It's just talk. Yeah, Bhagwan, I'm not afraid of dying. Now, yeah, that's fine until death happens. And then you will see. It will just talk for you. So I'm not talking about that kind of pseudo-fearlessness that is derived from your familiarity with the philosophy, right? And remember, as long as the teachings is philosophy to you, you're still on the outside of the teachings. When teachings are lived, they're no longer philosophy. They become your view, you see. It's a very different relationship to the teachings between the outsider who simply is a collector and the insider who is a liver of the teachings. Very different relationship to the teachings. And so those of you who have a fearlessness based on your philosophy, that will not help you. And now I'm not talking about that. You will not meet your death fearlessly. Quite the opposite. But the individual who has actually integrated the teaching to some extent will achieve this degree of fearlessness at the time of his or her death and dying. The least prepared person, of course, us, when death greets us, we will simply go full of nothing but regret. Nothing but screaming and kicking. And remember, all of your scriptures will not help you at this point. The experience of death is so terrifying. It is so much more intense. You won't remember none of your songs, your surahs. You won't remember any of that stuff at all. So we have to begin to understand that how we meet death, whether we meet it joyfully, like a child jumping into his mother's lap, or we meet it fiercely, like a warrior, or whether we meet it with regret, depends on exactly what you're doing with this Bardo, this life. This is the Bardo in which one has to prepare oneself for the Bardo of death and the Bardo of afterlife and the Bardo of becoming born again. And if one has failed to prepare oneself in this Bardo, you have nothing coming. The Guru cannot die for you. The rabbi can't die for you. The priest can't die for you. The mullah cannot die for you. The sheikh cannot die for you. You will have to die on your own. Asdamos sanentano. That's how it is. So we want to take death seriously. One of the problems you see in the West, we don't take death seriously. There was a few years ago, the BBC made a documentary on people who were dying, who have already entered into a terminal illness. Just a few days they knew that they will be dead. And they filmed these people, like Bilal is filming us. Maybe Bilal should go film some people who are really dying, right? And then Sathra, you can make copies of that tape and make it available to us. I think you will learn much more than what I can teach you here. In any event, you see, the BBC did that. They filmed people who were confronted now with the reality of their death and their dying. You see? And it is interesting, one of the ladies on there who was dying of cancer, and she said to the interviewer, she said she had a message from her deathbed that she wanted to make sure that everybody who was watching this film would heed. And what was her message? Her message was simple. She said, please, she made a passionate plea that you take death serious. She said, I never took my death serious. She said, death is serious. Death is real. And we need to take it very, 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 very seriously. Now, taking death seriously does not mean that we become morbid. You see, it does not mean that at all. Taking death seriously means something very different. You see, it means that we will begin to conduct that kind of investigation and contemplation that will generate the insights and the understanding that will enable us to die if successfully. It is very interesting when we look at this life of ours that we're living. Instead of this kind of preparation for death, what do we very often find is going on in this life? Have you ever thought about it? We've been talking about the nature of the Bardos, you see, of death and afterlife and so forth and so on. But certainly we should first begin by investigating the nature of this Bardo of living. And what is it then that we find ourselves preoccupied with in this life when in fact we're not preoccupied with a deep preparation for death and dying? You see? What are the things you will find? It's interesting. The mystics say that in this Bardo of life, we find ourselves pretty much consumed in the 8 worldly activities, as they call it. Those 8 worldly activities briefly consist of 1, the preoccupation with praise. Have you ever thought about it? How much time and energy you have spent in this life and you are continually spending in order to elicit praise. It's interesting. You're pursuing your PhDs, you're pursuing your all these other things, and for what other motive than simply to have someone praise you? So in the Bardo of life, we find that a lot of our energy and time is wasted on the pursuit of praise. One of the other things the mystics say that we will find when we look deeply into the Bardo of living that consumes so much of our time and energy is our preoccupation with developing a so-called good reputation. A lot of time and energy is involved in the creation and maintenance and perpetuation of your reputation, your politics, your self-propaganda that we send out in front of us, right? One of the other things you see that consumes so much of our energy and time in this Bardo of life is our preoccupation with pleasure, the pursuit of pleasure. Almost none of us are free from that drive. Oh. And we find ourselves totally preoccupied with this pursuit of pleasure in some shape, form, and fashion throughout all of the five sensory systems, don't we? Seeing, tasting, touching, smelling, feeling, etc. Almost all of our senses are focused in on trying to extract as much sensual pleasure as possible. In fact, it is interesting. My sister-in-law yesterday, I mentioned to her, I said, Jewel, I said, we're going to have some conferences on death and dying. In a jokingly way, I said to her, you should come, knowing that she probably would not. But it was something that I wanted to elicit a response because I have to do my research too, you understand, right? You can't just read books to get knowledge. You have to talk to people. Is that right, brother? And so what Jewel told me, Kiba, she said, oh, no, I'm not coming to anything like that. I don't want to think about this kind of stuff. She said, what do you think I'm trying to eat so much for? I'm trying to eat as much as I can before this moment, you see? Right? So Jewel represents a whole category of people who through one or other of the senses is trying to get as much pleasure as they can before life terminates. You see? So pleasure then, in all of its many facets, very often dominate our time and energy in this Bardo of life. One of the other activities that consume so much of our time and energy in this Bardo is the pursuit of material gains. You see what I'm saying? We all find ourselves very often expending a lot of energy and a great deal of our time in pursuit of material gain. And why is that? You see? Because the feeling is that by amassing a lot of stuff that we can somehow or another dilute, even to some extent protect ourselves from death and the pain of dying. And so hence, so much of our energy and time is devoted to the acquisition and the amassing of material things with the intention of minimizing our suffering and extending our date with death as far away as possible. And the remaining activities that we find ourselves involved in from these 8 fundamental worldly activities are just the aversion part to that whole piece. That is, we find ourselves trying to avoid, you see, loss, naturally. If our objective is to amass and gain, we want to avoid loss. Avoid pain because our goal is for pleasure, etc., etc. And so these 4 fundamental things in their opposites constitutes our whole activity in this Bardo of living. And what is this worldly activity rest upon? Have you ever thought? There is a kind of fundamental ignorance that generates this worldly activities that we just looked at. And the mystics say that that fundamental ignorance is the result of our failure to look deeply into and investigate the nature of life. It is interesting that when we look deeply into life and we investigate the nature of life, the essence of life, the dynamics of life, the mechanics of life, when we understand that, when we get a glimpse of that, something very interesting results. The first thing we begin to discover is that nothing is permanent. This becomes the great realization that we all come to. Nothing is permanent. Everything is in flux. Everything is changing. But most of us have a very naive concept and definition of impermanence. So perhaps we should pause for a moment and we should look a little closer at this law of impermanence, because this is one of the first things that you must contemplate. The mystics say that you must contemplate certain things if you are going to be able to adapt to the realities of life in such a way that we prepare ourselves for our impending death and dying effectively. And the first thing that they say we must deeply reflect upon is impermanence. What is really meant by the mystics by the word impermanence. Now, again, most of us have a very naive concept of impermanence. We think that by impermanence, that something durates for a fixed period of time, and then it goes out of existence. That this rock is permanent, impermanent in the sense that, yes, it's existing right now, but a time will come when it don't exist. That is a naive understanding of impermanence. When we enter into a deeper study of science and physics, we find out that things are constantly in flux at a molecular level, aren't they? Right? Things are constantly swirling. Energy is constantly transforming itself, moment by moment. Not even a moment, that's too long of a period. The physicists call it a nanosecond, a 1/1000th of a second. They say at the rate of 1/100000th of a second, all material things are constantly transitioning in their energies. Nothing is stable. But the change is occurring so fast, your eye can't catch it, because the frequency of light that enables you to see is too slow. It's much like when you watch a movie, those are just still shots, aren't they? Rapidly being pushed through the camera. They're still shots, they're frames. And if you slow the tape down, you can look at frame by frame by frame. But when they speed it up, you get the illusion, don't you, of an uninterrupted sequence and flow. But it's an illusion. Something like that is also happening in the real world, off of the screen. But because you can't see it, you get the illusion of solidity, solidness, fixation, permanence. The reality of life is that nothing is permanent. You begin to understand the deep meaning of impermanence. What are some of the deeper meanings of impermanence? One of the things we've already talked about, death. That which is born will die. This is a fact. No getting around that. Fact two, and you are uncertain of when that moment of death will be. Fact two. These are facts. Contemplate it. Look at that. Look at that. Contemplate that. Go deep into that. See that. Make it more than philosophy. Make it your view. Enable yourself to see that. The ability to see that is what we call becoming establishing in the view. Get established in the view, to recognize that, see that. And when you can see that, you'll start seeing some other things very interesting. You'll find out, for instance, that anything that comes together is bound to separate. Everything that comes together will separate. Every person that you are now with, you will become separated from. You will become separated from your wife, from your children, from your husband, from your boss, from your friend. Any relationship that has come together will separate. This is the law of impermanence. Either you're going to die, or they're going to die, or there's going to be a divorce. Something's going to go down that will lead towards separation. Make no mistake about that. Get clear on that. Because if you don't understand that, you'll go on clinging. You'll go on clinging and grasping. You see. You have to understand, no relationship, period, will last forever. This is the law. There will be separation. And just understanding that takes a lot of pressure off of us, doesn't it? Because we've been trying to cling to these things out of ignorance. We've been trying to avoid separation. No. Separation is inevitable. At some point in this life, in the time between your birth and your death, you will become disconnected from all of these relationships. Domo sanentano, that's the way it is. And understanding that will give you a great deal of relief, emotionally and psychologically. It will tend to reduce your grasping, your attachment, your clinging tendencies, which is based on your ignorance of this fact of life. Whatever that has been amassed will be depleted. Law number 3, right? Whatever's been amassed will be depleted. Meaning your money that you've been working so hard to amass, at some point it will be depleted. If not by you, by someone else, but it will get depleted. You will become separated. Now you will work very hard to get your hands on money, only to find that something comes along and take all the money. This is the law. This is how it is. Whatever has been amassed will be depleted. This is the law. And we have to understand that. We have to understand that. Whatever has been constructed will disintegrate. Anything that has been constructed will disintegrate. Your car will break down. Don't get upset. Why are you getting upset? It is in the nature of the car to break down. It's going to break down. No need to get all bent out of shape. The furnace will go out. Anything that has been constructed will disintegrate. This rock will disintegrate. The tree will disintegrate. Your body itself will disintegrate. Everything that has been composed of the 5 tatwas, the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, will disintegrate. Your shoes, everything. And then understanding this deep law and reality of impermanence, when you understand that deeply, the benefit is that you will begin to let go of stuff and things. You will enter into a let go relationship with the things and events of life. And that will eliminate so much of our suffering, even in this Bardo. So we have to begin to look and contemplate on these things, fearlessly contemplate them, and really begin to understand this law of impermanence. And as you look deeply into the law of impermanence, the one thing you'll find out is that the law of impermanence exists because of the law of interdependence. Now this is interesting. There is no such thing as independent existence. Never has been, never will be. Nothing that we are experiencing is inherently independent at all. The tree, this tree is in existence only because of the supporting network of countless other phenomena going on. The water that falls on its leaves, the soil, the nitrogen in the soil, the sunlight, the wind that sways it, even the chirping of a bird. Remove any of these factors and this tree goes out of existence. You see? So you begin to see there's a deep correlation between interdependence and impermanence. And you have to reflect on this here. Slowly it will come to you. Maybe your first attempt at reflection won't yield the treasure-like understanding of these laws and insights that the mystics have left to us. But if you continually contemplate and reflect on the teachings, then that reflection will reward you with the same insights of a Buddha or a Muhammad or a Jesus or a Christian or a Kabir. But we have to do the work. We have to have the courage to at least question things. So we begin to see then that interdependence then is the foundation of this reality. And because nothing is independent, therefore nothing is permanent. In order for something to be permanent, it must be independent. And since there is no such thing as independence, hence there is no such thing as permanence at all. This is reality. And it's not a morbid type of thing. When you have done the reflection correctly, you will find yourself experiencing a great deal of relief. A great deal of pressure will go off of you. You see? A lot of that clinging and grasping begins to disappear of its own volition when we really understand that. And understanding that, we automatically start reprioritizing our life instantly. It's very beautiful. So we begin to see already now the immense benefits of just a casual reflection on death and the nature of impermanence. By just casually reflecting and understanding the facticity of our death, it enables us to reprioritize our life, to strip away all the trivia and meaninglessness. And the further reflection on impermanence begins to detach us. You see? These then are the two of the treasures that are the result of the teachings. There are more. There are a lot more. But I want to remind you again and again and again and again that it is never enough to simply collect the teachings. That you're going to have to do more than just simply collect teachings. You're going to have to integrate those teachings into your day-to-day. And those of you who have a sadhana, those of you who have a technology, if you will, for meditation, and I know that many of you have that technology, and I know that you have so many struggles. And I can only suggest to you that you're going to continue to have this struggle with your sadhana until you really understand what we've been talking about today. Until your sadhana is rooted in this understanding, then you're not going to be able to do any sadhana at all. Because your sadhana for you will simply remain optional. Because deep down inside, you still think your death is optional. And I've been trying to say in so many ways, I don't know how else to do it, is to somehow convince you that your death, your dying, this ain't no option. This is real. This is going to happen. This ain't philosophy. This ain't philosophy. You're in the process of dying as we speak. And it is your sadhana, your meditation, your spiritual practice. These are the only things that can prepare you. And so if you are not taking your sadhana and your spiritual practices seriously, then I know you cannot be taking these talks seriously. I'm not stupid. I look stupid, of course, right? Nothing wrong with that, but I'm not taken in by that. You have only understood these teachings, according to me, to the extent that you are meditating and doing some spiritual practice. And that's a way for you to check yourself. If you are not finding yourself involved in your spiritual practices, then know that you've not understood anything that I've said, and that therefore you need to reflect some more. What you need to do some deep reflection. You need to look at this again and again and again. You still have some things obscuring your view. You see, you still have some denial going on there. It is interesting, hard as it is for some of us to believe, that the vast majority of us are in a deep denial about our death. And that denial carries over into your spiritual practice. And I know So even those who are able to every now and then get up and do some budget, you see, maybe every 2 weeks they get in a budget mood. You understand, right? And they get up 4 o'clock in the morning, as if you're gonna. It's certain you will die at 4 o'clock in the morning on a rotation of 2 week cycles. What is that? You, your time of death may come when you can't get your barangin and do no budget. You have no pillows to prop yourself up with and get in your postures. You may get wiped out on the Dan Rhine. Therefore, you should be practicing on the Dan Rhine. Remember, Mararepa, again and again in all situations. Your sadhana is not something that you do every 2 weeks for 2 hours in your closet, sitting on your pillows, in your lotus postures, repeating your mantra. That's not preparation for that. In the sense that I want you to get into this. So, without a deep understanding of death and impermanence and the value of this precious human existence, it will be very difficult for you to even take advantage of the technology of meditation. Even if you were given a spiritual practice, it's not going to do you much good because you don't have enough understanding to utilize it. This is always one of the things. Somebody used to ask Maharaji one time, they said, Maharaji, why have you initiated so many people? Because that's strange, isn't it? You know, these mystics come and they initiate hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. You see? And Maharaji had thousands of disciples all over the world. Why are you initiating so many? And he said, yeah, you don't understand the law of nature. To get one blade of grass, nature will throw out 10 billion seeds. It is almost like that on the path. A guru will come, he will initiate millions of people to get one or two. So the reality is that the vast majority of us, you see, are so deluded that we are not able to take advantage of these initiations that these masters have come. We're so deluded we can't take advantage of their teachings. These beautiful teachings that have been left to us from all cultures, from all different traditions, you see, are almost useless to us today. We're so deluded and in such deep denial. But there will be one or two out here today. One or two of you will understand. You will hear the teachings. One or two of you will. It'll really go into you. It'll penetrate you to your bone. It won't be just superficial. It won't be just another form of your entertainment. No more distractions. It will penetrate you to the bone. You'll feel it. It'll haunt you. It'll linger in your mind. You won't be able to get it off your mind. You'll start finding yourself becoming established in the view, continuously. You see, watching for the moment of death, preparing yourself, continuously. One or two of you will start experiencing rapid detachment by reflecting on the laws of impermanence. You see, your grasping will stop. You see, your clinging will stop. You'll start letting go. One or two. And that is enough. That justifies the giving of the teachings. The one blade of grass justifies nature dropping 1 billion seeds down. It justifies it. You see. But I wanted to, as we talk about the Bardos and we talk about these kind of teachings, I wanted to try to be as clear as possible on this. Out of my own compassion, I want to be clear. You see. I want the teachings to some extent, alleviate some of your suffering. So you will forgive me for my repetition. You will forgive me for going over some of the same old stuff over and over again. But I'm trying to pour out enough so that one or two blades of grass will sprout as a result of that. Now, I think we should have some time for washroom break, and then we will resume, and then I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions, comments that you may have on anything that we've discussed to date as it relates to death, dying, and the art of living, the Bardos, etc., etc. All right. We'll continue our, our discussion uh, on this enjoyable topic. You know, actually, I should warn you: don't reflect on death and dying if you're depressed. Okay, wait until those times are when you're the happiest, when you're feeling very inspired. Right? That's the best time. You know, I don't want anybody to leap off of a edge. Okay, so but certainly when you're in the best of moods, you know, sometimes we find ourselves naturally feeling very introspective. Very often we come in places like this. One of the beauties of this here, these gardens, these Japanese Zen gardens, and the emphasis is on Zen gardens because they were designed physically to create a environment to induce that contemplative and introspective state of mind. So in Japan, this too is a part of meditation. Their art is a part of their meditation. Everything is to contribute to the generation of that kind of contemplative and introspective state of mind. So if you can, come back here on your days off, huh? And sit again under this beautiful gazebo and listen to these birds and reflect on the things that were said here today. But certainly, uh, uh, any time that you spend reflecting will pay off very largely. So if there's some questions and things of that nature that you have, we talked about a lot in these last couple of sessions, and there's so much more to talk about. But rather than pouring new stuff on top of you, I thought we should take a moment and process whatever we started with thus far. And then once that has been done, then we could go deeper because there's more. You know, the knowledge and wisdom that these mystics have made available to us is literally infinite. It's literally infinite. There's almost no end to it. And so the Bardo insights are the beginning. They are part of a long series of other deeper and deeper insight. And please bear in mind, the more you reflect, the more meaning you get out of it, because the teachings are very magical in a sense that every time you revisit them, you get deeper insight. You come again in 6 months and you revisit them, and again your insight will get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So it is something very unique about the teachings. Every time you encounter and reflect on them, the payoff is an increase in your wisdom. So if there's questions, comments that you have, please feel free. Let me see. Yes, Khadija?
I have a question. I was looking at a movie last night, and the people were shipwrecked, and they'd been out to sea a really long time, and they ran across a Japanese submarine that had come up, and they begged them to take them aboard, but apparently, maybe after the war or something like that, and they refused to help them. And they said, well, please just give us some water. And they said, how can you leave us out here? What are we supposed to do? And the captain looked at them and he said, eat time. And what do you think that means?
Oh, what do you think it means, sister?
It was just interesting when you were talking about the gardens, because he didn't seem to look at their plight with the horror that they felt, that they were feeling.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, you see, time when it is spent in deep reflection is like a food, isn't it? Knowledge is like a food. It's a kind of sustenance. You see. Um, I remember there's a story from the the Buddhist tradition that sort of speaks to your question. And the story is about one of the great cave dwelling yogis that stayed up in the Himalayas. And of course, in his cave, his whole pursuit there was the pursuit of this wisdom, this prajna, as they call it. In any event, one day some hunters was coming in the vicinity. They had been out hunting Khadija, and they were not able to successfully kill anything, so they were hungry. So they finally came to the cave of this yogi, right? And they, first of all, he was just sitting up in his cave, so they were frightened. They didn't know, is this a ghost, an apparition, or is this actually a man? Finally, it became clear that this is a human being, you see. So they said, well, thank God, we were out here, we were hunting all day, we were not successful in killing anything to feed ourselves, and we're very hungry. Can you please give us some food? And the great yogi told them, well, I don't have no food, you see. And they said, come on, stop this nonsense. You out here in this cave, you've been out here how long, years, and you don't have food? They said, you got some food in here. And the yogi again tried to explain to him, I don't have any food, And so that naturally they thought he was lying, because how can he survive without food up in this condition in the cave? And so they began to harass him, you see, to try to force him to give up the location of his food. And so they tried to grab hold of him, but as they reached for him, they reached right through him. You see, they then tried to throw rocks and things at him, and he just really dematerialized and reappeared, hovering at the top of the cave and so on and so forth. And the story is very beautiful, but it really illustrated is that when one is able to use one time effectively, it can literally become a replacement for food. So you must learn how to eat time, must learn how to live off time. So anywhere you turn, you see, Khadija, the teachings are coming to you, huh? So you can't even watch TV without being reminded, huh? That's a good sign. Yes. So these are things that we have to look at. Actually, you see, there are 3 tools that we all can take advantage of in order to attain enlightenment or to attain wisdom mind, or whatever term you want to use for it. And the 3 tools are called listening, reflecting, and applying. Now it's interesting. The first thing we have to do, of course, is that we have to hear the teachings. We have to be able to hear the teaching. Do you know how many human beings have never heard the teachings? How many will never hear the teachings? Even to have heard the teachings is a rare thing. Very rare. Very rare. And so our karma, if we have good karma, then in our human birth, at least at some point in that human birth, we will have a great opportunity to hear the teachings, to sit and listen to the teachings, right? And remember, even just a little bit of the teachings can be used as a great tool. You may not be able, for instance, to hear all of the teachings of a Buddha. Buddha gave 84,000 different sets of teachings. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave so many teachings for so many years. The Quran was a continuous phenomenon. You see, the Quran was a continuation of the deepening of the Prophet's own enlightenment. But these teachings are such that if you can just get a little piece of them, they will heal you. So it is very fortunate for any human being to be able to encounter the teachings. The teachings in its oral form, because the teachings have forms. It's interesting. The most powerful teachings are given orally. That is called the transmission of wisdom. That is when the guru, the sage, the Zadik, the, the Rebbe, the Mullah is alive, you see? And the transmission is capable of being given forcefully and fully in the oral tradition. The teachings also are sometimes given symbolically, you see? Very symbolically in the form of scriptures, books, things of that nature, you see. And then they say, for instance, that there's a way that they call the direct way. And that's with no oral teaching, no written teaching. Just direct from the wisdom mind of the master to the mind of the disciple. That's a very rare phenomenon, you see. Very rare. Only those of us who are very receptive, if we can make ourselves very receptive, then these great teachers need not open their mouth in order to transmit to us their wisdom mind and thought. You see? I must have reminded you last time I told you of a story where one of the great yogis transmitted the view by hitting the disciple in the face with his shoe, knocking him out. You see? These are very different kinds of ways of transmitting the wisdom. But in any case, whether you are encountering the teaching through the direct method, or whether you are encountering the teaching through the great oral tradition, or through the symbolic form of writing and architecture, because the ancient African mystics and sages were able to code even their architecture with teachings. I mean, it's profound. But only a disciple who had a key could decipher the message in the architecture. The architecture was meaningful. It was a great teaching going on there. Even down to the Gothic age, you see, this kind of understanding of the kind of incorporation of truth even into a edifice, a building, a house, a temple, a stupa, was understood, you see. Lucky then are those who can encounter some teachings in their human birth. So to be able to hear the teaching is a tool that you can use to move toward deeper and higher levels of consciousness and wisdom. I said the second one is reflecting and contemplating on those teachings. Because remember, if you do not reflect and contemplate on the teachings, your understanding will be shallow. Your understanding will never get beyond fanaticism. And that is what happens if you look at a fanatic. A fanatic is a person who has not done any deep reflection. They've got the teaching, they swallow them, but the teachings have become for them a kind of dogma, a kind of doctrine. It is a belief system. You ask them, say, well, I believe in Islam. I believe in Christianity. It is never, I live Islam. I live Christianity. I have become Christianity. I've become Islam. I've become Judaism. It's never that. It is always only involved with their intellects, their beliefs. Nothing wrong. They don't have another tool. No one has told them that you have now to deeply reflect and contemplate on these teachings and make them your own. Right now, you are simply reiterating the truth of a Buddha or of a Muhammad. They ain't your truth. You don't know none of this stuff. You have no personal first-hand experience. You have fanaticism. You have belief, yes. But belief is not first-hand experience. They're very different. You can't write no Quran. You can't write a Bible. You can't write a Torah. And only when you can yourself write the Torah can you understand Torah. You see the difference? One has to enter and have a second tool, and that tool is the tool of contemplation and reflection on the teaching. Fearlessly. Fearlessly. Because when you go deep into the contemplation and the reflection on the teaching, much of your ignorance is going to be stripped away from you, and that will be painful. It's interesting. One of the things that we're most attached to is your knowledge. We actually think we know something. Almost all of the conflict that goes on between human beings is centered around this ego clinging to its own illusionary sense of knowledge, your opinion, very attached to your opinion. And what deep contemplation and reflection does, it starts dissolving that knot in your mind that constitutes your so-called knowledge. You start discovering for the first time that I didn't know. Because the deep reflection will reveal something to you, and the first thing you say, damn, I didn't know that. Damn, I didn't know that. And you will never come to this experience of, damn, I didn't know, if you did not reflect. You would have continually walked around thinking that I understood something. And you will simply remain ignorant. So the second tool that the mystics talk about is we must use this tool of deep contemplation and reflection upon the teachings so that that knowledge now moves down from just in our intellect. It becomes a part of our heart wisdom. You see? Wisdom of our heart. It penetrated us to the heart of our being. The third tool is application or practice now of that understanding. Remember, even once you have gotten understanding, you're still a long way off from enlightenment. You see? You still have to take that next step. You have now to apply the teaching. And this is the hardest part for all of us. We really can't seem to understand that you have got to actually integrate the teachings into your life. We just really can't get with that. We still somehow are convinced that I am deriving some benefit from reading my book. Now, I'm reading the Gita, I read the Gita, I read the Vedas, I know Vedanta, I read the Quran, I read the Bible every day, I do this, I'm studying philosophy, metaphysics, and it's hard somehow for us to become convinced that you have got nothing. In this Bardo, it's hard for us to be convinced of that because the feeling is that I got something. I'm inspired, you know. It seems like I understand things a little better. It's only at the time of death that you realize you didn't have it. You see? Do you know how many scholars? You should see some scholars die. It's an ugly thing. It's an ugly thing. They die screaming and kicking. You should see some of these great religious leaders on their deathbed. They don't die like a Buddha. You see? Not at all. You should see it. All that scholarship, all of their beliefs, all of their books did not help them at the time of their death. Because they never integrated. They never practiced. So we have to now apply the understanding that has been the fruit of our reflection and contemplation that was possible because of our encounter with the teacher. That has to become applied. And that is the third tool and the most important tool. So these are the three tools that all of us have an opportunity to use in order to attain our original state, which is the state of bliss, truth, freedom. And that's the whole function of all of these spiritual systems of cultivation, is to enable us to use these tools. So if you have some questions, if there's something we need to look at again, then you're most welcome. We'll look at it. Or we can sit here. I mean, whatever you decide. I'm enjoying these birds. The birds are giving a beautiful discourse today. Have you been paying attention? They're really laying it on us thick today. Even a stupid question will do. Don't try to be too deep. Yes, we can count on you for a stupid question.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, I was sitting wondering about the beauty of death.
Mm.
How can you explain to a child or your children about the beauty of death when death is depicted on the media and the movie as something to be feared?
That is always a great task. You see, it is very difficult. As all of us know that in our culture, of course, uh, there is really no kind of education that really prepares us for this dying and this death. That can't make us even see death as a continuation of life, if you will. That death is a great opportunity to be transformed. You see. To see death as a chance for you to be engaged in the ultimate spiritual practice. So many yogis, you see, are in the caves trying to withdraw from the body. Well, at death, you can automatically withdraw. And that's the beauty, that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to assume no posture. For those of you who are having a hard time holding your posture, you won't have to worry about that. You won't have to worry about concentrating on your mantra and all of that. You will get pulled out of the body, right? So for those of us who have been trying all our life to achieve this exit from the body, then death is the ultimate sadhana, if you will. But for those who have not sat there, it's very difficult. Now, it's interesting. Our children tend to take on the same attitudes that we have. You have to understand that the family that we're born into is our second womb. And like any womb, inside of the womb of our family, the embryo, the child, begins to assimilate all of the qualities of the parents of that system. So if our attitude toward death is there, right, then the children will mimic it, right? If we have actually entered into the deep experience of dying while living, then that's even better, because then it won't be philosophy, you see? Because for most of us now, really, I mean, there's not much that we can say about death and dying, because there's not much we know about death and dying ourselves. We can't really alleviate the fears of other people, because deep down inside, we're still afraid, you see? And remember, you may not be afraid intellectually, but I don't count that. You see? That doesn't count for much. Unconsciously, deep down inside, there's still that fear. So die well, you see. And that will be a great lesson for your children. Yes, sister? Everybody go through the Bardo. That's interesting. Not only a 2-month-old baby makes is ruthless. Even this insect here, when it dies, will go through all the 4 Bardos. Everything goes through the Bardo. You see? Everything, no exception. Think about it. Have you ever thought about it? What went on in the Bardo of Rebirth, the Sipo Bardo, that shaped your life this time? Have you thought about it? Let's not go in that direction. Let's back up for a moment. What must have happened in the Bardo before this birth? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I thought about it. And I often wondered,
what happened in the Sipo Bardo prior to this birth? Benita, what happened?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember? you don't remember? Well, they say, for instance, one of the great mystics say, if you want to know what has happened in your past Bardo, look at this body. And if you want to know what's going to happen in the next Bardo, look at your actions. Now, this is very beautiful. This is very beautiful, isn't it? Now, you look at your body. Is it the body of an ant? No, it's the body of a human being, which means that you must have had some great virtue. You must have done some great meritorious action. You must have spent thousands of lives of committing all kinds of meritorious and virtuous deeds. You must have accumulated much good karma. You must have done something. I mean, you must have had, it's hard to even verbalize the quantity of merit you must have had in order to be in this body. You see? Now, whether you'll be in it again, look and see what you're doing. Are you still accumulating virtue? Are you still accumulating merit? So that child of 2 months old, you see, will go through the same Bardo experience. It's really interesting, sister. I want to speak to your question, but I'm hesitant because I don't want to further confuse the issue. Because see, there's levels of realization, about 10, and we haven't hit 1 yet. So there's a limit here. But if I took some realization from one of the higher categories of realization, let me say this then. The reality is this, sister, is that this body, this you is an illusion. What I'm saying is that the you that you are, that you think you are, is an illusion. It is unreal. It is insubstantial. It has no independent reality whatsoever. And if one can understand the illusionary nature of your own self, then a great prajna, a great wisdom can descend. Now this is a profound teaching. You see, this is beyond the Bardo. If you all hurry up and finish with the Bardo, we can get to the Doshin teachings, that talks a lot about that. But we can't go there until we got this one clear. But your answer is in a higher level of the teachings. You see, you have to understand. For instance, when you dream at night. Now you dream, is that right? Have you ever investigated the nature of the dream? Because the dream is one of the Bardos, isn't it? We talk about 4 major Bardos, but actually there's 6. It is the dream state and the state of samadhi and meditation that are part of this life. In this body, in this life, you know, we can, through meditation, go into samadhi, right? Or we can go into dreams, right? So those are 2 additional Bardo. But it's very interesting that in order to really fully understand Bardo, you need to understand your dreams. The dreams are a good model because the Sipo Bardo, the Bardo before this birth, was experienced very much like a dream. And this is profound. Now, at night when you dream, what is essentially happening? Have you thought about it, sister? The mind projects the dream. Is that right? Is that right, everyone? The mind projects the dream. And in the dream, does it project experience? In the dream, does it project experiences? Are those experiences experienced as being real? You don't experience your dream as being real?
Well, yeah, when I'm dreaming, yeah.
Of course. Get next to her and help guide her through this, brother.
I know that I'm dreaming.
Then this wasn't a dream. In the dream, you see, you actually experience the projection. In the dream is real, right? And then upon awakening, you realize that they were not real at all. That they were simply a projection of your own mind. Is that right? But notice this. Not only was the experiences in the dream unreal, the experiencer in the dream was also unreal. Are you with me? Is this clear? Is this clear? Can you follow me? The self in the dream that was having the experiences is also a mental projection. You got that? Well, that's how it is with this self that you think you are now. The self that you feel you are now is simply a projection of your higher self into this dreamlike nature of samsara. Yes, brother? We talked about that earlier. When you go deep into the reflection on the reality of things, what you find is that for something to be real, it must first of all be unceasing. Is that right? See, there's something like relative reality and absolute reality, right? And one of the things we do in this Bardo, of course, is that we confuse the real with the unreal all the time. That's part of the stuff that generate our experience of ignorance. But that which is always the case is real. And only that which is always the case is real. All else is phenomena. All else is insubstantial. All else is impermanence. Now the question is, what experience are you have that can fit into that qualification of being changeless and always the case? Now the reality is that it is not your ego, because that's constantly changing. The mystics who have looked deep in this, they said that the only thing that exists continuously is your consciousness, the mind and its consciousness. That is what incarnates from birth to birth to birth. That is what moves through the Bardos. This ego is a temporary phenomenon. The mind that underlies and supports your contemporary ego has supported billions of egos. You see? Why can't you remember the stuff from your previous life? Because you were not the same ego you are now in your previous life. Do you understand me? Is this clear? Yes, sister?
Okay. In light of the fact that we experience everything through our ego and stuff, do we ever experience our mind and our conscience? A lot of times you think of conscience, you think, oh, I shouldn't do that or something like that.
This is the whole goal of the spiritual practice, is for us to experience the true nature of our mind. And the true nature of our mind can only be experienced when we are able to go beyond the contents of mind. You see, what are the contents of mind? Your thoughts, your emotion, and all of your reactions to experiences that are being generated by the mind. When you could go beyond all of that, then for that moment, one gets a taste of one's true nature. And this has been described as being empty, contentless. So whenever you can cease all thoughts, you will move into your true self. You will get a taste of yourself. You see? It is a kind of answer that I cannot give philosophically. It is a kind of answer that you can only get, Rakia, by moving deep in the course of wisdom. So you can come to that place for all thoughts. Well, you're no longer identifying yourself with emotions and thoughts and all of these other things. Because that is the problem now. We can't get a taste of who we are because we are continuously misidentifying. If for instance, if I go on thinking that I'm Abraham Lincoln, I cannot know that I'm Bhagwan. The two phenomena are mutually exclusive.
But aren't you Bhagwan because of the ego, or because is the mind is empty, kind of?
Yes, actually there's no name.
Am
Actually there's no name. You're absolutely right. The mystics have called that nameless state. They've given it no name. You see. They're giving it no name.
So once I would reach my mind, then that's when I would realize the introduction to this kind of oneness.
Right. That's when you actually have the experience that all that you have been thinking is separate from you. That you have been experiencing separate, and the other is nothing but a reflection of you. The experience of being an ego drop. Ego is a state of confusion. It's not an entity, it's a state of confusion. You understand? When you are confused in regard to your true identity, that state of confusion is what we mean by ego. And egolessness means coming out of that state of confusion.
It also seems like you would give up your identity too.
Your identity? This is ego. What does identity consist of? Body, speech, mind, and lower mind at that. It's very profound. We'll go into that when we finish. Are we finished with the Bardo now, and we ready for Goshen? Huh? All right.
You talked about death and dying.
Yes.
Is it fear of letting go? Is it based in not knowing how you're going to die in the moment? And that, I don't know if it's a question or a statement. The fear of not knowing whether it's going to be natural or unnatural, or whether it's going to be painful or painless.
I think so, brother. I think it's a combination of all of that. What the brother is saying is that what is really at the core of our fear of death? And it's a legitimate question. Because it's a question that each of us has to answer for ourselves. That becomes part of our investigation, right? In fact, what we have to do, brother, we have to investigate the nature of our own fear of dying. And we have to see, what is that rooted in? Like Mararipa, out of that horror, we must flee into the mountains. And now contemplate again and again on the uncertainty, the origin of that fear, right? As it relates to us. Now, when you ask about it, what is it that you are so fearful of? What is it? What is so terrifying to you about the fact that you're going to die? What is that? We said before, is it because now you will not be able, as my sister-in-law said, to eat as much as you like? And it may be something that simple. You might be afraid of dying because now you can't eat no more. You see? I don't know. But each of us have to investigate the nature of our fear, because this has to be dealt with. You can't move into sadhana. You can't move into no kind of authentic spiritual life. You cannot really seriously practice. You can't do any of that until you conquer, like Melaripa, that fear. So your question is right on the money. It's, you see, right on the money. You know, you did not miss the mark by a hair. You have asked the right question. But in order to get the right answer now, you should linger here today after we've gone, and like Buddha, refuse to get up out of your chair until you got the answer to that question. You see? Yes, brother.
Talking about the fear of death. I know there are some people who commit suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, they run into it.
Yeah, they,
So what you're saying is right. Those people who don't tackle something in this life, they need to give it up.
yes.
Okay? But there are some people who feel they have something with it, like they want to give it up. But death is weapon.
Here's the thing, most people that commit suicide, brother, is very interesting. Most people who commit suicide think that by committing suicide, they'll actually relieve their pain. It's quite the reverse. You know, they're still trying to solve these problems here by killing themselves, not realizing that now they're going to run into an experience that is far more horrendous than whatever they were experiencing in life. Because remember, death, the suffering that you will go through at death is vastly more intense, 7 times more intense than what you, all of the fear. It's interesting. In one of the Bardos, you see, in the Bardo of Rebirth, right? No, in the Bardo of, right before the Bardo of Rebirth, what we called last time the Bardo of the Afterlife, the Bardo of the Mata. And in the Bardo of the Mata, there's about 4 events that occurs in that particular Bardo. Remember we mentioned that the first event is the rising of the energies of the tatwas and the elements in the form of sound, colors, and light. The very energy out of which emotions and thoughts emerge is the first thing to be manifested in the unfolding of consciousness out of the moment of death. Do you recall that discussion? Well, one of the other things that occur in the Bardo of the Mata is what they call the 100 wrathful and peaceful deities. That's a Buddhist term. It doesn't matter what term we use. The point I'm trying to make is that one of the things that begin to unfold as your mind re-emerges out of the moment of death. And this is for the unenlightened person. This is for the non-practitioners, right? One of the things that will emerge is all of your fears. And all of your fears that you've been running from, suppressing, hiding from. And that Bardo will re-emerge full-blown, with no suppression, no way that you can get around it, no distraction. Now, if you're afraid of a rat, You got this phobia. A big rat will appear, and you will go right into its mouth. This is going to be terrifying. All of your fear. Your wife will be in that Bardo. Right? She'll come back, or he'll come back, right? The point is that all of your fears, your deepest fears, that don't even nobody know you got, those fears, brother, that you will find when you go into that deep investigation, all of those things now will reemerge 7 times more intense. And the horror of it all would be so great you would simply faint. Can you imagine? The person that commits suicide, you see, they step into a world of shit. That's why all spiritual teachings and all religions say the same thing. To commit suicide is a great sin. It is a sin in the sense, it is a great mistake. You're making a big, big mistake now. Because you are really now. You can even handle the little stuff of this life. You can even handle the little bardos of this life, the little suffering of this life. And out of ignorance, lack of preparation, you were too ill prepared even for this bardo. That's deep. You can't even handle this bardo. There's people like that. Oh, Bhagwan, I don't know what to do in life. It's too stressful. And I say to myself, my heart aches for these people. Because you mean to tell me you can't handle this little pressure and tension? You can't handle this little problem? And you gonna die like this? It breaks my heart. Because I know that person is really gonna suffer in the next market. You see? Immensely. And they make a mistake by prematurely entering into that heart. Yes, sister?
But just later with that, how do we handle situations where we have people that are being artificially kept alive, like our loved ones, or people that maybe are medically in excruciating pain, like the Kevorkian issue?
The Kevorkian issue, yes. Well, it depends. I don't know what Dr. Kevorkian is doing, but if he's not giving them no Bardo teachings, he's not helping them very much. To give the dying the teachings is the greatest help that you can provide them with. You see, to simply make their entrance into the afterlife, the after-death Bardo, without them being prepared for it, I mean, it's really no help to them.
But what about a person that is their pain, physical pain, has reached a point where they really aren't able to do anything?
They will go into the next Bardo where there is no Kevorkian, and the pain will be even more immense. Now what will they do? You see, there's nothing gained.
So if we are given, if someone comes to us and they say, well, you want to just leave this loved one on a respirator endlessly, or do you?
Well, it's your choice. I mean, that's a decision that you have to make.
How can we make that choice?
Well, the point I think that we should be more concerned with is that when we have that loved one teetering on the brink of dying and death, that we should give them some teaching. Because the teaching will give them relief from the pain that is yet to come. You see my point?
Yes.
You see.
I do see your point, but
You should ask them, do they want to be disconnected from the machine?
But what do we do if they're not fully conscious?
Well, that's a decision that you have to make, you know. That's a personal decision you have to make. If you disconnecting them because you're trying to reduce their suffering in the body, you see, if they're so far gone in the body already, you see, then they might have become oblivious to the pain already. You see. Who can say? There's no way to say anything about that. You have to do what you feel is best for you. And you have to know that person. You see, only you know that person. You've lived with this person. You understand this person. But as far as the Kevorkian thing, I do know this, that to help a person die quicker without preparing them spiritually is to not have helped that person at all. Because look at the reasoning behind this. Now, you have so many people that come, and they're just a little depressed. Now, should Kavakian hook them up and kill them because the pain of their depression is too much? You see, soon he will have those kind of people coming and say, help me kill myself. I need a better way than jumping in front of a train or slamming my car into a wall. I mean, that whole concept, you see, of trying to avoid that which is unavoidable. Chung Tzu said that this kind of suffering is born with us at the time of our birth. This inevitability of the pain of dying is born with us at the time of our birth. And from that point on, we simply become more and more stupid in the sense that we continually try to avoid that which is unavoidable. There's going to be great pain for all of us. Please make a note of it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Now, you may leave instructions to your loved ones. Okay, when you hear me screaming, you know what I mean? Then, disconnect that machine, let me die, or put some drugs in me. You see, there is a level of pain, Khadija, that no drug can medicate. That's my point. There is no medication for it. There's nothing that the doctors can do. If you in the hospitals, you can talk to doctors, you'll find out. There's only so much morphine they can give them. Because the pain is not always just physical. A lot of the pain is the pain of becoming stripped of your attachment. Now, what can medication for that, right? And killing you faster simply push you into the Bardo faster. There is no substitution for wisdom. Please make a note of that. None. None whatsoever. And yet, if the person has not practiced this preparation for death and dying while alive, then naturally, at that time, at that critical time in their life, it's going to be very unlikely that they will be able to adopt to the practice. It's very interesting that the easiest Bardo to make spiritual progress in is this Bardo. It is very, very hard for those who have not practiced in this Bardo to practice in the next Bardo. So if you've been thinking, well, Bhagwan, okay, I ain't gonna do no meditation in this Bardo, but in the next one, you see, I'm gonna do deep meditation. No. No, it's not gonna work like that. You can't do meditation and spiritual practice in this Bardo, you ain't got a shot. If you can't concentrate your attention now, with all your pillows behind you, stuff behind you, comfortably in your air-conditioned room with no distraction, how you gonna concentrate when all of your suppressed fears are rising up in front of you? When that rat is sucking you in, how you gonna repeat your mantra? You're not gonna make it. You're not gonna make it. You will not have become, you have not become established and rooted in this state. So we have to do that now. That's again what makes this body precious. And please remember, folks, today we're not talking about philosophy. You have no option. You're gonna die. It's not an option here. I'm not talking about theoretical things. You're gonna die. Try to get that through your skull. You're gonna die. Try to further understand, and you're not prepared. You ain't got a clue. You don't know what to do. You ain't ready. And that's not going to make death any difference. And it's not going to be a party at your auntie house, right? Get rid of all of the illusions that you've been caring about it. You're not going to become no Buddha on your deathbed. None of this stuff going to kick in. You understand? If you're not a Buddha now, you're not going to be a Buddha on your deathbed. So don't even go that way. All of the scriptures that you memorize will be of no use to you. You must have ability. You must have the ability to die. Ability. Not information, ability. Big difference. The ability to die. And if you don't have the ability to die in awareness, you're in trouble. Now this is the truth. And that should not depress you because you're still alive. You got time. Get busy. Reprioritize your life. Get busy. Start dropping some of that trivia. Get busy. Reprioritize. Take the hint from Mararipa. Flee to the mountains out of that horror. You see. Enter into the fortress of the deathless and unending nature of your true self. Find that thing in you that brother was asking about, that is real, that is unchanging, that is not subject even to death, that was never born, therefore will never die. There is something in you that was never born and therefore will never die. Try to get established in that now. You see? Try to get into that. You see? That's where you want to go now. And get used to being in that so that when this ends, you can rest in that. You could just relax and rest in that. And not react to all of the things that are going to be going on around you at death. And you have to remember, it is your reaction, isn't it? At the time of death, we talked about how all of these visions and hallucinations and fears arise. Pleasures also. And interesting, in that Dhammata, all of your desires, your deepest desires arise. The most beautiful woman that you can imagine will show up in that Dhammata. You ain't seen no good-looking women until you go into the Dhammata, or no good-looking brothers. You understand? And then that desire, that pleasure will pull you, and again you will miss. So you can be distracted by both your pleasures and your fears. And therefore you have to have the ability to rest outside of that attraction, right? Nothing must disturb your resting in this wisdom. You must not be distracted by your pleasures or your fears. You must remain rooted, seated in that state of awareness. That's why it's so important to practice this now, in this Bardo, you see, by not overreacting to our pleasures and our pains in this Bardo, so that we can start getting that ability developed. But if we enter into death and die and without that ability, then you're not going to make it. So it's such a beautiful thing when you reflect on the dynamics of death and dying, because by reflecting on these things, it enables us to live better lives. By reflecting on impermanence and all of these things, it enables us to live more authentically here and now. So it's a great thing. Sandra?
Yeah, you say we're not going to make it. Like, I don't understand what you mean. What's going to happen?
Well, when I say that we're not going to make it, in the sense that the pain and you will miss the moment of and that opportunity to become enlightened. Remember, with telling Rakia that when all the thoughts and all the emotions and all of the desires are removed or dissolved in the process of dying, you weren't here, you didn't get a chance to hear it, but Sandra, we had talked about how death is really the deterioration and the dissolving of all of those things that obscure the reality of who we are. The process of dying dissolves all of those things that we go on misidentifying ourselves with. We lose the body, so the body can no longer, interfere with our pure realization of who we are, because we will lose this body. We lose all of the elements. We lose all of the attachment. And when we go into the inner dissolution, after the breath has itself stopped, when the essence that we have brought from our parents collapses into the heart, into the blackness of that experience of the moment of death, when we lose all of the stuff that generates our desires, our emotions. We talked about the 33 manifestations of anger, the 40 manifestations of desires and attachment, and the 7 manifestations and negative thought states that are generated by ignorance. All those things are removed from us. And what is left is just pure existence. What is left is just clear, pure awareness, stripped of all of its obscuration. And that is the moment that we can realize who we are. That we could have remained awake through all that process. And when we miss that moment, it starts unfolding. And that unfolding, Sandra, is the thing that becomes so painful. You see. So it was painful going in. That's why we call it the painful Bardo of dying. It's interesting. The mystics went out of their way to put that adjective on it. The painful Bardo of dying. Because it is so painful. The pain that you have in this life, right? Try to understand it. You have pain in this life. You get a toothache, do that hurt you? Right? You break your arm, do you feel pain? Do you feel pain? Right? Do it hurt you when things don't go your way, expectations? Do that hurt? Then all of that is what you will experience. Going into that Bardo of dying.
I understand that it's something very painful. So what's the end result?
The end result is that you will simply faint, miss the moment to become enlightened, and then you will have to take a birth again and go through this all over again. Again, you will come into this cycle. And you may not get a precious human body. Now, that's the real thing. You may come back an ant this time because you have exhausted all your merit. Do you know it took the merits that you have been accumulating for 2 or 3 million lives for this time for you to get this human body? Some of you even borrowed merit. You got a debt. you got the body on debt. Yes, Sandra.
Well, I'm not understanding this. You come into this world, you obtain a human body. What about the Jeffrey Dahmers, people like that?
Yes.
If they've been so good or they've acquired all these merits, why do they come here and do that? And then when they leave, I mean, are they assured of getting another human body, or they might come back as an ant, or what?
To answer to your question, remember we said earlier that the mystics said if you want to know what went on in the Bardo before this, look at your body. Dharma got a body. He did something right in that karmic Bardo. He can't take that from him. Now, what he do now with this body is another issue. And we look at his action. Look at his action. What has he done? You see what I'm saying? Because we get a human body, it's like the reward. It's like if I gave you a reward. You see. Now, once I've given you the reward, now you can go out and buy. Let's say if I gave you a $10,000 reward for helping find something, and I give you that reward, and you take the money and go buy all cocaine and kill yourself. I mean, it's your reward. What you do with it is based upon what you've attained spiritually, right? The human birth very often is the result of the accumulation of marriage that we have accumulated over millions of them. And we get all of that stuff. That's why the mystic said, don't mess it up. Don't mess it up. Don't squander it. Don't blow it. Get some teaching. Find a guru. Take full advantage of this opportunity. Because you will not get it again. It may take millions of births now. So what happens is that we come into this birth, get this body, which is the accumulation of vast virtue and vast merit. You see. Don't do anything with it, right? Totally unprepared for death. Go into these bardos, get all messed up, do all that suffering, right? Come out of the karmic rebirth part and start the cycle all over again. It's profound. We don't want to Sandra, we don't want to miss not one opportunity. Because God knows when we'll get this thing. But see, we all take it for granted that you get to human birth again. It's not, you know. Yes?
Yeah, but I don't even quite understand. You're saying that once you go into the Bardo and you're feeling all this pain, you've already said you've lost the body. When you continue to that Bardo of the fear and all of that, is the individual still feeling that that they're embodied, but they're,
Oh yes, they will still feel embodied.
They feel
Yes,
embodied.
because the physical body, but there's an astral body, there's a causal body, there's bodies within bodies. Right. You see. So just like your physical body ache, your astral body be hurt, and your mental body be hurt. In fact, the suffering in these bodies are more intense than in the physical body. That's the kicker. That's the kicker, because these bodies are more intense, more sensitive. The astral body is far more sensitive than this physical body. You see, just a little thump on the knee of this body, it doesn't bother you. Thump that knee in the astral body, it is like breaking, like somebody done broke your leg. You feel much deeper. Remember, the experience is more intense. And so the experience of the pain is more intense. And the experience of the pleasure is more intense too. So it depends on what you got in your karma.
Bhagwan, the other thing is, when a person dies and they don't come back on the astral plane than on the physical plane. Have you said?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Uh-huh.
more sentient beings waiting to get a body. Because even these bodies are rare. Even the body at the end is rare.
So how do they get an astral body? I mean, how do
Death,
they?
you automatically, when you die, you out.
So they're just astrals. They're just disembodied.
Oh, you can't hear what she's saying?
Okay.
What she's asking is that she's asking about the fact that when the pain, the suffering that we undergo in the painful Bardo of dying, and that pain is related to the physical body. But after we've gone through that Bardo of dying and enter into the moment of death, she was trying to figure out, well, what is it that is suffering? Because we ain't got no physical body no more. And I was reminding her that, so what? You still have your astral and causal body. And that it is in these embodiments that you experience the suffering. And in fact, you experience the suffering more intensely because these bodies are more sensitive, right? So the pain in the astral body, the pain of the mental body is vastly more aggravating and painful than the pain you feel in this physical body, you see. And she was beginning to try to find out then another answer to a question that she had regarding the number of beings, sentient beings at these intermediate bardos who are waiting to take birth are vastly more than those that have taken birth. There are vastly more beings waiting to get into a body, even of an insect, than there are beings that are embodied already. This thing is deep. You're gonna find out. You just be patient, right? If you don't feel like reading another book, you don't have to. All of this you're gonna find out, and if you want to know sooner, call Dr. Kavaki, and he will help you get all of your answers right away. Yes, Makia.
I was just thinking when you were talking about karma, and I was thinking about the way it seems that some religions, like Hinduism, use karma to say, well, the reason I'm rich is because I was a good person before. The reason that you're poor or you're blind is because your karma was worse than mine. And and I've always thought that that was the wrong way to use it.
Well, you see, sister.
For someone to say, oh, just because I have more, that means I was a better person, or because don't have a handicap or so forth, that means I had better karma. But I've noticed that a lot of religions use it that way, and that seems to me to be wrong.
Well, you see, sister, what is the theory of karma really trying to tell us? The theory of karma really is a understanding, when understood, produce the highest level of morality. Because the law of karma fundamentally is based on the realization that you will undergo the consequences of your actions. Now, this is the heart of the law of karma. And so when we subscribe to the law of karma and reincarnation, because it's hard to subscribe to one without subscribing to the other, they are interrelated, you see. The understanding that should arise from that is that make us feel very responsible for our actions, knowing that the action we commit now will determine our future experiences. But by the same token, and the corollary is that what you're experiencing now is a result of your previous action, in any respect. Now, it's questionable whether having money is good karma. You see, that's the point. That's the point. The mystic therefore define good karma and bad karma in a very different way than we do, Rakia. Our defining of good and bad karma is always in connection with our ego and its ambition. You understand? Our ego values. But the mystics do not define karma based good and bad on our ego values. The mystics say that karma is good that brings you in contact with the teachings, that bring you in contact with a master, that karma that enables you to practice the teaching and apply them. That's the best karma. Now everything else is a descent from that. It has nothing to do with your wealth. If being poor makes you more receptive to the teaching, then that's good karma. If being rich makes you more receptive, that also is good karma. Buddha was rich. He was a prince. Muhammad, peace be upon him, his wife was rich. It gave them the luxury, the leisure. You see, if your poverty is keeping you working 7 jobs and keeping you trapped in this maya, this samsara, and you are so hard pressed to to keep food on your table, that you got to make a choice between food and meditation. You see, it's difficult. That poverty, that blessed are the poor may not be applicable to you. So it's not a good karma then, bad karma has nothing to do with these relative ego values that we carry. You see my point? Yes, brother.
Yeah, speaking about poverty and children, if a person is rich and he can look around and see he's suffering, he's so selfish, he don't share his wealth, try to alleviate some of his suffering, don't that make him selfish?
Yeah, I suppose so. You see, how do you help a person? Really?